Today, Israel mourned the passing of one of its outstanding and most upstanding political figures, Moshe Arens, who died at 93. Born in Lithuania, his family later moved to the U.S., and Arens served in the American Army during World War II. In 1948, he immigrated to Israel. An engineer by training, he joined Israel's fledgling aerospace industry and helped develop its Kfir fighter jet. He was a devoted follower of revisionist leader Vladimir Jabotinsky and joined the right-wing Likud party, serving in parliament. As ambassador to the U.S., 3 stints as defense minister and 1 as foreign minister. Although a staunch opponent of Palestinian statehood, he was respected across the political spectrum for his personal integrity. He was also the key political mentor of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who wrote today, "A few weeks ago, I visited Moshe at his home. He was as lucid as ever, sharp as a razor, magnificent in his splendor and nobility, an exemplary figure. There was no greater patriot than him. Moshe Arens' tremendous contribution to our country and our people will be remembered forever. Farewell, Moshe, you were never less than pleasant to me. I loved you as a son loved his father." And Moshe, the nickname of Moshe Arens. Well, we're joined now from Jerusalem by Dan Meridor, the former Israeli justice minister and Israeli parliament member from the Likud, a close contemporary, of course, of Moshe Arens. And Mr. Meridor, Moshe Arens had such a long and varied public career. What do you think we should primarily remember and honor him for?
Well, I, of course, lost a very close friend. We met over 40 years ago in what was then known Tnuat HaCherut, the Cherut party on which Likud was later built. And we became friends. Politically, we were very close, but moreover, Moshe was a unique person in that, although he was very clear about his positions, he was very soft-spoken. He was respected all over the place because of the very decent and logical way he always used in argumentation. He had what we in Hebrew called hadar, gentlemanly behavior. In very tough political fights on very sensitive issues, he would always keep it calm, and it would be great to agree with him and not less interesting to argue with him. He was a very important defense minister and changed the army in many ways, although he did not come from the general staff of Israel. He was an engineer in aerospace, and he was very prominent as defense minister, shaping Israel defense doctrine for years, and as a very good foreign minister as well. Interestingly, and very importantly to me, he saw and showed how you can combine the 2 narratives, the 2 pillars that were the Likud, not the Likud of today, evidently. One is the national, and the other is the liberal column. He was a national person. The Zionist movement was his movement. He always worked for this. This is his life. He devoted for this, but not at the expense of equality with the Arab citizens of this country, for which reason he objected to the new nation-state law. He says the Arabs should be fully integrated. They are full citizens. They should be incorporated and not excluded from our society. And all his life in the army, outside the army, when he was Minister of Defense, he tried to integrate the Israeli society, yes, Arabs, Jews, and Jews all together. As a person, I think I lost a friend for Israel, one of the figures that we don't have as many of in this sort, that you can look up to and say to your children, you see him, do what he does, act like him.
Well, let me ask you that, because you say we don't have too many like him. There are some who would say that maybe, as some say of you, he had too much integrity for Israeli politics. He vied to be the prime minister. Yitzhak Shamir wanted him to be a successor. But is it possible that Moshe Arens, in a sense, was too clean for Israeli politics to make it to the top?
I hope not. I don't think cleanness is a deficiency. I think this should be the norm. I don't think his cleanness was a problem. He indeed was not associated with any criminal offenses or investigations. He was above suspicion, I would say. I don't think this is the problem. He came in a time where others were prime ministers, and you saw Shamir, with whom he worked very closely as prime minister. And then, of course, he competed for premiership in the Likud against Bibi Netanyahu. Only Bibi won in the second phase, and so he was not the prime minister. You have only one there. And I don't think this says anything about his cleanness. People can be clean. I'll give you one example, Shamir, another example, Begin. Nobody ever suspected one of these leaders of the Likud for being unclean or improper. That this is not a precondition for the Likud, was not at least,
that's true.
To be clean.
As you mentioned, though, that was some time ago, at least a few decades ago, at least certainly for the case of Yitzhak Shamir. I want to ask you about Moshe Arens' relationship with the U.S. He came from the United States. He was raised there, but he also had many conflicts with the Americans on issues, and also, most famously, the Levi fighter jet, the Israeli jet that was canceled under American pressure. Was that his greatest disappointment, facing that from the U.S., that pressure from the U.S.?
Well, I can't say whether this was a disappointment because he was raised in the U.S. I don't think so. Misha was very clear in his views and what one should or should not do. He was very much for the Levi. One issue where I and he did not see eye to eye, and he did not like my position on this, but it was great to discuss it with him anyway. As he was, by the way, against the peace treaty with Egypt. He voted against it, that Menachem Begin signed, which I think was the greatest Israeli political act ever. So that it's not that he always went with the majority. No, he had his opinions. He stuck to them. And in America, he was a very important ambassador in 1981, 82, 83, until he moved from the embassy in Washington to the defense ministry in Israel. He knew America very well. He was raised there. And he did a great job as ambassador in the United States as well.
And just briefly about Moshe Arens, his relationship with Prime Minister Netanyahu. How would you assess that briefly?
No, I don't think I should go into that. He was the one who invited Bibi to join the Israeli diplomatic corps when Misha was the ambassador in Washington, and recruited Bibi from what he was doing in business then at a rim company, a furniture company, and called him into the service, and he promoted him, no doubt. Whether he agreed with everything Netanyahu did or not, I don't want this is the time to discuss it, but as I said, along the years, he once competed with him for the leadership of the Likud, and he had his own views. I can't speak on the relationship between them.
Okay. Well, we should note that the Prime Minister Netanyahu did say, despite their differences, he was in contact with Moshe Arens right until, of course, his final moments. And, of course, he paid his respects today, as people did across the political spectrum, even those who disagreed very vehemently with them. Dan Meridor.